Welcome. My name is Joni Parsons. I'm co-creator of Rebel 11 along with Monica Smith. Monica, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
We created Rebel 11 to provide edgy, informative, fun events and retreats for women, and we're so happy to have you here today. I've worked with Andrea over the years, and she is a keen expert on building a social media platform. Social media can be an enigma, can't it? Not really knowing if it's a good use or a bad use of time, what platform you should use for what. And gosh, it's just a big old question mark sometimes. But what I've learned from Andrea is that you can build and utilize this platform to help people know all about your authentic self, as well as communicate what's important to you. You will learn a lot today about what to do and what not to do in these simple steps that Andrea will share. Andrea, thanks so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you, Joni. I am really psyched to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited for you to share all of your knowledge today. First of all, we'd like to have you participate in a couple of questions that we have for you in the chat. And the first one is, do you think your use of social media is effective or not? So please put that in the chat because we want to see everyone's knowledge before we get started in our conversation today. No, I follow but never post. Cynthia, just moderately, so much room for improvement, not particularly. Nikolai says yes. Okay. Moon Love says yes. Use it daily. Not really. Could use it more for personal interaction. Okay, Andrea, always interesting to see who's on the call today. So our second question is, which platform is your favorite? And here's the key, especially for sharing about your causes. So please share in the chat, which platform is your favorite, especially for sharing about your causes? Instagram, 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 times 4. One said Facebook. Somebody said they deleted Instagram, hi Sarah, because it was dominating their life. I get that. Facebook and LinkedIn. Okay, Instagram first. So there we go. So that's really good awareness of who is in the audience today and what they're using. So Andrea, always interesting to see that. And I know that you're going to have so much to share about those comments. But let's first get started by telling us a little bit about you. But what I want to know is, are you a climate strategist or are you a social media expert?
Oh,
Please share, Andrea, about you. You're so many things. What are you?
That is a really good question that I actually get a lot from clients and prospects. And I lead with, I'm a climate action leadership strategist. And the use of social media is a tool. But interestingly, I've become known for the tool because I have this particular way and I'm good at it, I guess, so that people are calling me, you know, the Twitter person or the LinkedIn person.
Or Miss Twitter.
Miss Twitter. And so I really appreciate the question because the clarification is that I use these tools to gather insight and to build community and engagement for this big cause in a variety of different ways with my clients.
And could you talk just a little bit about your passion and how you've elevated your platform before we get started into some tips?
Yeah, so I'm not someone who came into my work via climate action generally, but I've been in corporate sustainability. I wrote a book on marketing to women way back in the day, got into corporate sustainability, started writing about it. One thing led to the other. I will say my passion for climate, working in this space, comes from specifics in that, which are I'm hugely forwarding and started the tag Bikes for Climate around getting people out of their cars. and plant-based for climate, about changing the food systems away from animal agriculture. When things like that align with your values, like I'm so aligned with those value-wise, it is incredibly powerful to do that work. So that's why I think it's fun to talk with people about how they can leverage these platforms for their own causes.
And you've made such a huge impact in both of those two areas, and I want to applaud you on your efforts. So let's get started about talking about social media. What are the biggest mistakes you feel that people use in social media?
The biggest mistakes are that they think it's going to take too much time. They think they need to have some clever thing to share all the time. They think it's about broadcast messaging. They don't realize it's about building community. Those are a couple of the top ones. The other one is I do get a lot of people saying either I don't like social media, or well, I use Facebook or I use Instagram, but I don't get that or I don't like that. I think if you look at it the way that I approach it, whichever platform you pick, this approach will help you love it and see the value of it. And you don't have to apologize to anybody for which platform you're on.
So let's talk about those platforms. How would you personally define each of those? Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Well, I will say that from my work and from being deep in this, wanting to build relationships with leaders, influencers, media to forward the bigger causes, that's my lens. I look at Facebook as families and kids and really lightweight stuff that now has come through with political yuck. And so I kind of avoid it personally. And I don't ever tell anybody when I'm working with a client that wants to use it, I say, you know, you'll have to get somebody else to do that. So I don't focus on that. Instagram, I love, totally see it as a time suck right away. The imagery, the fun of it, I very involved with a radio station here in town that uses it incredibly well, love it. But I don't see the weight of it or that it is influencing a cause. It might be getting likes from friends a lot, but it isn't as much about, oh, this is the cause and please support it and tell your senator and whatever. It isn't being used for good. It's more lightweight again. I see it, again, my perspective, more of a People magazine level, like this is fun and this is great and there's amazing art and small businesses get followers and all that. So I love that. But it isn't in the leadership leveraging space that I see. Let's
Pinterest.
see. Pinterest. I know nothing about it, which is interesting because it doesn't even come into my frame for my work or for any cause. No one I know in causes has ever said, oh my goodness, Pinterest is great. So I haven't even looked at it.
Okay, let's talk about LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, it's boring looking and it seems very old fashioned and whatever, but if you dial in and engage with it the way that my approach should help you, excuse me, it can be really powerful. One of my clients right now wouldn't have known to really leverage it the way that they are now. And it's been really powerful, at the equivalent of Twitter for us. So it's a B2B, leader to leader, influencer to influencer, does not have to be about jobs and career.
Okay, let's talk about Twitter.
Twitter is super powerful. I stumbled across it. And if you look at my approach with it, again, B2B, peer-to-peer, influencer to influencer, it's not about, I went to this restaurant and doesn't this food look great or whatever. It isn't really to be used for that. It's to be used for the categories of topics, finding your people, finding the influencers and helping move those things forward if you want to, or stay on that news topic and really learn deeply and find out who the journalists are. And who the academics are involved in the research or who the political leaders are. So if you know how to use it and you can tap it, it's extremely powerful. Again, not consumer facing at all.
So let's talk about building a leadership role for doing social good. We're going to be talking about that, but let's talk first about business. And you've mentioned a couple of things already, but what are some tips that you would target to business leaders using social media?
one of the things I say a lot is not to think about it as a broadcast messaging thing. So I think there's a slide that in my presentation it's not a megaphone, it's an earphone. It's more a listening and learning tool and connecting. It's not, my event is happening. We just published this report. Aren't we great? I think a lot of businesses get that wrong. And if that's really what they want, they should be on another channel. Let me see what else. They also think it has to take a ton of time, and that the main thing is that they have a bazillion followers, which is absolutely not the case if you're using it for a particular cause or to reach particular influencers.
Okay. Now, what we wanted to talk about today is doing more around social good. For instance, being an activist. I am very involved with the Washington Farmland Trust. I think that preserving local farmland is critically important to our local food systems. How would you advise me on social media?
I would advise you to watch for the national news stories and anything that's related, even in a huge, big global way, to what you're doing, because you can say, have you read the news about climate change? Have you read the news about agriculture, whatever? This is what we are doing in this incredible organization in Washington State. So one of the things is to just keep thinking of how you bridge to fresher, hipper, right now news. It's going to do two things. It's going to catch the eye of the people reading it, of your potential audience. It's also going to potentially put you on the radar of the journalist whose article you're sharing, and potentially see you as a resource should they want to do a story on farmland in Washington State. So that's one thing.
Okay, so let's get into your PowerPoint. And these are what you call the 5 L's of leadership, which was a piece that you did for the magazine Green Biz a couple of years ago. But what are those overarching tips for social media? Hannah, can you go ahead and share her PowerPoint, please?
Or I will do it.
Or
Hannah,
you'll do it.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I'm not, yeah, I gotta, let's see.
Hold on just 1 minute. We'll
Sorry,
be
everybody.
chatting about her 5 L's.
Okay, and it's all the way at the end. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so we've already been talking, so that's the title, so we don't need to talk about that. And then this was a little bit
about— you're not sharing, so.
I'm not.
No.
Okay, why don't we have Hannah do it, since I can't seem to do it?
Yeah, Hannah, can you pull that up for us? Great.
Sorry.
That's okay. Here it is. So just tell Hannah when you want to move forward.
All right, so go ahead to the next slide. And that's just a little bit about me. Gives you a sense of kind of how I came to this, and that I was not some sort of like media guru or digital. This has been writing and marketing to women and leadership and corporate sustainability and climate action, all through which I've been using the tool. And I do want to say this, the way that I became an expert is all these many years of using it. So I know this because I've been watching and learning from it. So you can't do this overnight. It's a commitment, but the long-term gains are incredible. So I want to say that. Next slide, Hannah, thanks. So a couple of the things that people think about when they're getting into this is that they're not ready to tweet because they don't know what to say. And so the deal is when you're first starting, no one gives a rip, and you're right, no one's going to see you anyway. So you need to decide, and I tell my clients and my friends this, what 3 things do you want to be known for? You probably know that whole thing about if you want themes or you want to be really focused on things, you pick 3, maybe 5, never an even number, but I say 3 to everybody. And I will say right now that my focus is on bikes for climate, plant-based for climate, and music because I'm involved with this radio station. So a lot of what I do is under that umbrella, all under climate action. So I don't say a lot about myself. I say a lot about my causes. The second thing is there's no need to spend a lot of time or be on multiple platforms. All of that is to say, so many of you said Instagram, which is fantastic. Choose your poison in a way. That's the one you're going to be on. Think about whether you're leveraging it or using it just for friends and to kind of have fun with various things, or if you want to use it for a cause, then think about using it more intentionally. And that's when the stuff I have to share will be helpful. The other thing is, with regard to spending time, I have 16,000 followers. There is no way I'm looking at my home feed and following 16,000 followers, people. It's that level of following back and forth is kind of the cocktail party. When you want to do work, when you want to really amplify a cause, you dial in, and this is what I tell my clients, to the top 15 to 25 influencers in your space, in your causes space, that you want to elevate, amplify, and where ultimately, right, in a dream, 10 years from now, maybe you'd be considered an influence in that wonderful space. But just make lists, and you can make a list either in Twitter via, they've got a way that you do that, or just to think of it yourself, right, on Instagram and wherever. Make the list of the top 10 accounts that you're really going to pay attention to, and keep your 3 themes in mind. And that shrinks the whole task. And then the other part of what I do is I want to help people have the capacity for this. So shrink your idea of how much time you're going to spend on it. Decide every day at 10:30 a.m. I'm going to check it for 15 minutes. Every day at 3:30, I'm going to check it for 15 minutes. And that's that. So be intentional, manage how you use it right from the beginning. And then finally, in terms of reframing, I like to think about this as helping you guys get comfortable being a public voice in these causes that you're really aligned with, that you really value. I want you to you get comfortable. So for example, if Instagram is your platform, do not get on Twitter because that's silly. If you're comfortable on Instagram, stay there. And then follow a couple people who you really admire in your cause, who have this wonderful, authentic voice, and think about why you follow them. You follow them because they have a wonderful, warm, inviting, accessible voice. Over time, watch them, develop your own voice, your comfortable voice in that same way. So those are the key things to think about in reframing as you get into social media. Next slide, please, Hannah. So the Learned theory, 5 L's. Listen, learn, love up, leverage, and lead. And I just want to emphasize that middle one, love up. That's the one that freaks people out. So I will walk you through this and tell you why this is the approach. Next slide, please, Hannah. So I did say earlier to just think, and when I say Twitter in any of these slides, I want you to think whatever social platform is yours, right? So it could be Instagram, could be Facebook. It's not about broadcasting your news or how great you are or whatever. It's about nuanced, consistent engagement and building trust for strategic leverage points. Again, I'm talking about for these causes and your values, not for your friends. You can do whatever you want with your friends. But if you want to be intentional about this, you're building nuanced, consistent engagement, and that's how you build trust, and that's how you build what I call social capital. And when you have social capital, you can activate it at a couple key points throughout the year for a huge impact. Next slide, please. So listen is the first one that I talk about. And really it's about looking. It's about deciding your 3 themes. It's about deciding your 10 to 20 influencers in whatever space you're really focused on. Learning what they know, learning, well, of the top 10 influencers I follow, these 5 are really good at the social platform. They're also sharing incredible links. They're curating, you can tell they're building community. So by looking and watching what's happening, you're listening, you're gathering insights into that world. So the first thing you do is listen. And again, I'll say, if you're newer to this, you don't have to rush into tweeting or sharing anything. You could have an Instagram account and never share anything. By listening in this way, you are going to learn so much and it will help your cause because you'll have your finger on the pulse. So listen is the first. Next slide, please, Hannah. And then the second one is learn. They're very closely related, but I like the two L's, of course. I'm looking for the L's. But the idea is that the more you kind of watch, the more, again, it'll filter out. Wow, this influencer, this academic, this organization, this executive director of an organization, they really know their stuff. They're really good on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And boy, wouldn't they make a great speaker for our event in the future? Wouldn't they make a great interview for the blog post for the organization that I'm sharing about? You learn more. You watch how they're engaging with people already, and you take your cues to engage with them that way. Same thing, I do a lot of warming of media relations. I'm not a direct pitcher. I'm not a PR person, but you better believe I have direct message interactions with journalists in my spaces all the time because I've learned what they're looking for and I offer myself up as a resource. No hard sell. So there's a lot of learning that goes on. Next slide, please, Hannah. So here's the thing. Notice the flow of conversation. Which are the most involved voices sharing the links that you most value? Which are the influencer voices you'd like yours to eventually be seen or heard among? Or how can you monitor that and offer these insights or be a resource for your organization or your causes on what's really going on, the kind of global conversation or national or local conversation you're seeing about this cause that you're for. So it's a dashboard of insight and informative conversation. If you never tweet, share, whatever on any of these platforms, see it as a dashboard of insight. Next slide, please. And Mike Berry no longer is the director of sustainable business for the retail store Marks and Spencer in London. He's retired and gone on to be an advisor in this space at a very high level in the climate action space. He said something once, paraphrasing Winston Churchill, that social media should be on tap, not on top. And it sort of relates to the question Joni was asking me at the very beginning. Am I a climate strategist or a Twitter person? I am a climate strategist who has social media on tap. I'm able to use it. I'm never going to put social media. I would never want to be the queen of social media because in my mind, broadly, that isn't enough. I like the thing, the topic, and then I can know how to leverage social media and my very specific platforms just for that. So I just like that idea of social media should be on tap, not on top. Never make it your whole entire life. Thanks. Okay, next slide, Hannah. This is the one. So it's listen, learn, love up. And love is a really scary term in organizations and in businesses. And people are like, what are you talking about, Andrea? And this is where the key is you've built social capital. You've built these communities and this engagement in advance, and you are able to activate them because you've done that. So I have been building this Bikes for Climate hashtag for forever. No one's ever paid me for it. It's my personal value, my personal cause, truly related to the climate action, the global work that I do, but I've never been able to leverage it. So get this, you guys. I was in an e-bike working group meeting where a member of Earl Blumenauer, Congressman Earl Blumenauer's team was on the call telling us about this new e-bike act, which was about an incentive to help people buy e-bikes. I immediately got off that call, got in touch with him and said, hey, I have this Bikes for Climate platform where I could activate bike Twitter and get them to reach out to their congressmen and reps and tell them that they would love it if they supported this e-bike act. All that is to say, by loving up people over time, I built a platform by using this Bikes for Climate tag and elevating anybody, mayors, politicians, et cetera, who are forwarding safe bikes in cities. I have this social capital and I now have political capital. When that person from Blumenauer's office saw that I had all these followers and that I was a known entity on this topic, he immediately got back to me. I got on the phone with somebody else from their office this morning, just before this call. They had never thought of what I'm talking to you about here right now, loving up in advance. They warned me, no, you can't go out and go, so-and-so congressman, please co-sign this bill because that's nothing. And I said, no, this is my approach. We're going to love them up in advance. We're going to thank them for even considering the e-bike act. And we're going to have all these people on Twitter doing that. She had never heard of that and totally appreciated the approach and is very interested, and we're going to keep talking. So this reaching out in advance to love up the cause, to love up the leaders, to love up anybody that's kind of doing good in it, no one else is doing it. You will stand out in a crowd, and it totally warms up the cause. The other thing it does is that it helps inspire the other people around you to do the same sort of love up. So another tag or phrase that I use a lot with clients is, and I am a very political person. I live in Seattle. You know, you can guess my orientation there. And you can get really angry and you can name and shame organizations and people and leaders, or you can just, you know what, in advance, I'm going to name and fame, and I'm going to love up the leaders that are doing the thing that I really want them to do. That's the counterintuitive way to do it. And you cannot believe the power, you guys. So you think about it and reach out first, never expecting anyone to come back at you and help you or give you any credit. It is the most powerful thing I've ever done. I could go on, but next slide, please, Anna. Thank you. The counterintuitive truth is if you act with an outward mindset, you celebrate, cheer, and amplify news, events, research, leaders that forward related similar causes or industry, this is gold. This is social capital gold that can be converted into political capital that can be very helpful in forwarding your causes, events, announcements, etc. Really fun. Okay, next slide, Hannah. Leverage. Now that's a really businessy, leadershipy word, and it kind of sounds like it's commercializing this whole thing. But believe me, when it comes to your causes and these values and this kind of crazy, yucky world we live in right now, building social capital and political capital and having a platform of any sort. Listen, you guys, it could be if you have 100 people following you that are really interested in your cause and you're amplifying it and getting the word out, that is helping a ton. So however many followers you have, however big of a platform you're building, you are adding value, and there's huge social impact in that. So yes, let's embrace the word leverage here. If you do the listen, learn, love up big time, no one else is loving up. With all of that behind you, the leverage can be really powerful. So that's the fourth L. Okay, next slide, Hannah. So this is the thing, from a professional perspective, warming relationships with journalists has been amazing for me. And I am sort of like a boutique PR firm. When clients hire me, it's because I already have relationships with these journalists. I do not have lists of people that I'm going to send releases to, but I can kind of message them from behind the scene. And I will say again, this is my active Twitter platform. This is sort of the same general idea and approach for whatever platform you're on. You could warm relationships with journalists or key people in your space that you want to know of your cause. It's a good way to identify and land interview subjects if you've started writing a blog for your cause. It ramps up effectiveness if there's an event or a conference appearance or a fundraiser. You can in advance start going, I hope everyone's going to be at blah, blah event for whatever. And then during the event, you can live tweet it. Like having a platform gives you, like, you're immediate. It's like almost like people pay for PR and for publications to say things about their events. You build a little platform and you are your own entity, your own kind of media entity. It also helped make you, if you're interested, a speaker or podcast guest to talk about these topics, and also can help you help the executive directors of your causes get those roles. It elevates your cause and the leaders in it. And it helps you publicize cause events or fundraising efforts. It's actually having an active and engaged platform, whatever one you're on, and having the social capital built just enables you to do so much. Okay, next slide, Hannah. So lead, and again, that's a businessy term. It's not that you want to lead, right? But it's with your causes, it's that you want to have an impact. You want to be making a difference with this time that you're spending on that. And so that's why I say lead. This is how you get to that success. Okay, next slide, Hannah. So just a reminder, listen, learn, love up. I always put the up on there because it's really got to be kind of an emotional, warm thing. It isn't just listen, learn, love, leverage, lead. It's listen, learn, love up, leverage, lead. And then next slide, Hannah. And then that, when you think about a leadership footprint, that leave in a way is the 6th cell, right? So it's listen, learn, love up, leverage, lead, and then you're going to be leaving an incredible footprint there. Okay, next slide, Hannah. So it's an online footprint to your broader cause forwarding content archive. Next slide, Hannah. And here you go. And I'm sure you can access this in other ways, but there's an article that I wrote. Follow me on Twitter and all of that. So I'd love to go to questions there. All done.
So first, Andrea, one of the things that we've talked about is authenticity is so critical in this whole effort on social media. And one of the things that you said is that you write just like you speak. Talk about this.
Yes. And so that's the thing. When I did that little video, that kind of preview thing for you guys yesterday that you put on Instagram, the idea is that people get all verklempt or kind of nervous when they've got to speak or they think their voice is out there. And from the get-go, I've always just been like, and maybe it's because I'm Midwestern and very practical, I've always been like, this is what you got. And
this is who I am.
What I've realized over time is that I can be, I'm not warm and fuzzy. I'm not whatever. I'm very straightforward and direct. And all sorts of people, especially in my cause, really appreciate my directness and my voice and it is authenticity, as we all know that word seems overused, but it's being exactly who I am, not shying away from it. The other thing is, as I'm talking to you now, what you see me tweet, if I were at some climate action event, this is who I am. So I am the girl who wears bikeable clothes in Seattle who, has to try not to say the F word. That's me. You've just got to, and people respond to that. So don't turn yourself into perfect. Like what would happen if I were in like this buttoned up, bow tie, really businessy, I wouldn't know what to do. It would be a total disconnect. So be yourself. Don't start speaking professionally, really scripted. Be yourself with all of your energy.
And put your heart out there. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. And it's paying off again and again because people know you're passionate and this is your thing. And you're not taking any detour off your messaging, which I think is key in this platform.
It is. Great point.
So Monica had a question about, do you suggest using personal and professional platforms in different ways?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely do. And that's why I sort of pointed out that Twitter and LinkedIn for professional are really powerful, and that your Instagrams and your Facebooks are where to be more personal. You'll notice also that businesses are very consumer facing on Facebook and Instagram, right? So think about consumer facing or business facing, same thing with you. If you really want to be in the leadership space, I would say get on Twitter and LinkedIn and get and one or the other. Don't freak yourself out by being on both, but pick one of those two is for business. All the rest of them, I believe, are more consumer facing.
And then we talked about the importance of Loved Up, and you shared quite a bit in regards to how to do it. Are there any other tips that you suggest for the Love Up part of the 5 L's?
Well, I think it's the boldness of reaching out first. When you're thinking in your head, wow, that's so cool that person just did that. Instead of just sitting on that, reach out and go, Susie, thank you for for sharing about that on your Instagram. No one else ever does that. And I will say this works so well, even with my work with media. Like I've built personal relationships with them to a degree, right? But somebody recently posted a great piece in Mother Jones on an agricultural food systems transition thing. And I'm probably the only person who was like, fantastic article, whatever your name is. Thank you so much for writing it. That alone, right? If you can even tell yourself to do that once a week, you're going to build followers and people are going to just notice you. So people notice that about me because I'm thanking people constantly, expecting nothing in return.
So I've heard that it's important to post at the same time every day. Is that true or false?
I think it depends, right? If you are in a businessy world and all of that, I think, and it's again, personal platform versus your leadership or your cause, kind of how you're using those. But the other thing is expectation management. People know that I live in Seattle. My time zone is probably 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time. They roughly expect me to be in there, but I'm doing this all day long. This is why I tell people get consistent. So if you are consistently, back in the pre-COVID days, a lot of people would get on Twitter or whatever on the train from work home. That's a consistent period of time. Every day from 6 to 7 p.m., you're on the train, and that's when you're on Twitter. Be consistent so that people know if they do want to engage with you in real time, they're likely to hit you then.
Okay, and then another question from Sue. How often do you interact with people who comment on your Twitter feed?
Often, unless it's a negative Nelly, right? I don't really, I don't get a ton of negative, but I also, if people thank me or they reach out and say something, I often, if I can give them any resource, or if I can say, oh, I know of this other person on Twitter who's in your community, who's in the cause, you should connect with him. So I am constantly going, Susie, connect with Bobby or whatever, and kind of reintroducing people. So yes, I do engage with people as much as I can on my own Twitter feeds and LinkedIn.
So you just brought up a really good point about negative comments. How do you handle that? What advice would you give?
I have, because I've been working with a lot of climate action organizations behind the scene, you do get sort of roped into, ooh, should we respond? He said something really mean or whatever. The blanket approach is to just not respond. And then if that person continues to do it, like say they do it for another couple of tweets or another couple of times over the course of the week, I mute them. They don't need to know that they're blocked, because a lot of times I think, and this again, is Twitter. I don't know how.
So you can do that on Twitter. Can you do that on LinkedIn as well?
I'm not sure what you can do on LinkedIn. I've never had that much of a problem on LinkedIn, but okay. I mute the person so I don't have to see it. Rather than blocking, because then they'll make a whole stink about how you blocked them. So I just mute them and learn to sort of mindfully just ignore them and really love up the people that are engaging with you in a positive way. I will also say, if there's a negative thing, but they're sort of approaching it more balanced, it's a yes and, right? If they're saying yes, that, but and I kind of might say back to them, good point, I'll keep it in mind, right? You just sort of do something like that. That's my approach.
Okay, so tips for adding to your audience and building more following. Are those hashtags valuable to find like-minded folks to follow you? Any other tips in that regard? Thanks,
yeah.
Cynthia.
Well, a couple things. A mind shift frame, which is don't worry about having people follow you, but finding more of an audience to forward your cause. And so I look at like hashtag climate action, hashtag food systems, right? Look at those two, like the duo hashtag, and see who's in that, and start to just follow people that are adding good value in there. A lot of times, because you've been working on this, they'll see that you're also contributing, they'll probably follow you back. So it will take you following to trigger that. But I do not have any clues on how you get massive numbers of followers, because it isn't something that has ever been on my mind. You will get the followers if you kind of approach it the way that I've suggested. And it is a longer game, people. It's not going to be overnight. So you will get followers if you do this approach I recommend.
So Andrea, we're going to wrap it up. Do you have any other tips that you want to just leave people with, or a thought?
Let's see, a thought. I guess the thought is, it doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to sound like a whole nother thing to do. It actually can be really fun and really rewarding. And any of my clients who I've taught this to, or who've kind of gotten into it, like say the organization hires me, but the CEO sees it or kind of learns some things, they've been blown away. They've gotten why this is important and it's worth doing. And again, just reiterating, think about your capacity and manage your capacity. But if you're really intentional with this approach, it will be fun, and in a way it self-perpetuates. So that would be my tip.
And I think the other tip that you were talking about right before we got on here was that you manage your time on social media very well. Like after 4 o'clock, you don't hop on it anymore, and you don't do anything on weekends. So I think I'll end with that tip from you that you shared early on, because, you know, as someone who is kind of addicted to her phone, that's a tip that I'm going to try to embody from this point forward. So thank you, Andrea, so much. It's so great to have you on and to share all of your valuable tips. They're outstanding. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You are welcome. And it was wonderful to join you, and fantastic Revel 11 crew. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks. And Monica's going to wrap up and share with you a couple of things that are upcoming on Revel 11.